welcome back to the 6th episode of Lady Lazarus. So glad you could join me. I'm your host, Charlotte Anderson, and I am exhausted. Emotionally, physically, spiritually, like every way you can think about somebody being exhausted, I'm exhausted. As most of you probably know, I took last week off from recording because I had my recital, which went really well, thankfully, and then I streamed it a few days after for family and friends, which was really fun. I got some great feedback, which was amazing. But since it's been done, I've just felt super, burnt out, I guess, and just really done with everything. I guess it feels like since I've been working towards this recital pretty much all year. For some of my pieces, I've literally been singing them since October or even September. It's like, okay, my recital's over. I should be able to go home and not have any more exams or classes to worry about. That should be my big thing, right? But it's not. And I have a lot of academic and music performance related things coming up in the next few weeks, which some I'm very excited for, like vocal showcase. I'm singing a duet with my friend Jeffrey, and I'm singing in a masterclass for a woman named Lynn Dawson, who was the funeral singer at Princess Diana's funeral. But for most of my academics, I'm not looking forward to doing the work. I'm just exhausted. So for that reason, I thought that it would be fitting to talk about burnout in this episode, mostly because I just don't really have the energy to talk about anything else. And before we dive into the topic any further, I also wanted to mention that I think a lot of us, especially people in the Asian community and women of all shapes and sizes, are feeling especially burnt out and tired and upset this week just due to the murder of Sarah Everard and the horrific hate crime that happened in the States a few days ago, the Atlanta shooting of mostly Asian women, which both of those are just heartbreaking, and I just can't even fathom how the families of these people must be feeling and how these type of attacks can still happen in 2021 when we're supposed to be making great strides towards equality of all the sexes and all the races. So I honestly don't have the strength to talk about it very much because it's very upsetting, but yeah, I just wanted to recognize that and say that I'm standing in solidarity with the Asian community, and I'm hoping to do more work to educate myself on how I can be a better ally. And if anybody has any resources that they'd like to share, that would be absolutely amazing. So with that being said, for this episode, I'm just going to talk a bit about my experience with burnout and kind of why I think people get burnt out. And I don't know, it's more just going to be a chatty episode. I wish I had all the answers to how to fix it. I don't, but it'll be more just kind of me working through it while talking to you guys. So let's get into it. Also, one more thing I realized before we start is my mic stand broke, so I'm holding my mic right now, so I apologize if there's any sort of weird sounds or the sound quality is different. I'm just not having a very lucky week. But yeah, so my experience with burnout, I think that a lot of people can relate to what I'm going to talk about, especially with, I think the first time I experienced burnout was when I was probably in high school. All through elementary school, I was in gifted programs and pull-out classes for kids who were above average level for reading or writing and things like that, which honestly is not me trying to flex because the school system is designed for a very certain type of person and it's not a fair system at all. So, but yeah, my brain worked with it, and so I was in all these pull-out classes and everyone was always telling me how smart I was and how good I was at school, and I never really had to try very hard. It just kind of came naturally to me, which again is just me being clicking with the system that exists. So yeah, I never really struggled in school. And then I think when I started, probably by the time I hit grade 11 and I started taking a lot of AP classes, I remember in September of my grade 11 year just totally feeling exhausted just from the level of work that I had and like how much time I had to spend just doing homework and other things. It wasn't even that the courses were too difficult. It was just that there was so much to get through and there was so much work to be done every day. So I literally cried like every day of September and I was fucking exhausted. And I think the problem with having like kids who are told that they're gifted as children and kids who are treated like they're more important because they're smarter than the average child is that it creates a sense of like, oh, if I have to actually work for something, then I'm a failure, if that makes sense. Like, I think the first time that I had to actually really make an effort in school, I was a bit shocked because normally things just weren't that difficult. And normally people were just constantly praising me. So getting like a lower mark than I expected on a test or a paper or getting constructive criticism from a teacher instead of praise always came as a bit of a shock to me. So I think, yeah, that was my first experience with being burnt out. And luckily, I kind of didn't really give myself a choice but to drag myself out of it because as much as I struggled feeling burnt out, my stubbornness overcame that. And I'm always been very stubborn, but so I didn't want to drop any classes and I enjoyed all the classes. So I decided to just push through and I made it and I did really well in all the classes. It just took a lot of perseverance and motivation from myself, which I hadn't necessarily had to use before. And then I think that everybody also kind of experienced burnout with the start of Zoom school, and that was just insanely difficult. And I'm a year in now. This is literally like my 1 year mark of having online school. My entire first year of university has been online. So that has just been exhausting in itself. And I think that anybody who's had to deal with it for this long is just feeling so burnt out with it as well. And it's just really difficult to find the motivation to do something when there's no kind of separation between any areas of your life. For instance, you know, school is online, your social life is mostly online if you're in lockdown right now. Everything is online, so there's no kind of divide. So I think a lot of us are just exhausted from staring at screens for like 8-10 hours a day. Honestly, like I spend so much time on my computer and my phone doing work and then talking to my friends and going on TikTok because I have a crippling TikTok addiction and, you know, just wasting my time on some things. So I think that, and then piled on top of my recital now being done, but I still have so much stuff to do before the end of the school year, is just like I genuinely just want to go home and not do schoolwork anymore. I'm just so tired. And I think the hardest part is just that I have so many things to do that I'm just genuinely not very interested in, but I have to do them to fulfill like my degree requirements. And I know a lot of university students will relate to this. It's like they force you to take classes to fulfill a certain requirement that you literally have no interest in taking. Or in my case, I thought it would be fine, and then I realized that it was actually super boring and just not that interesting. I'm not going to say exactly what class I'm talking about because I don't want to get beat up by a prof, but it's not a music related class, I'll say that. So yeah, I'm just honestly feeling so exhausted. And I think the shitty thing about burnout is that, well, there's lots of shitty things about burnout, but one of the worst things is that it doesn't just impact your like academic, say you're burnt out academically like I am. It doesn't just affect your ability to do work and get things done, but also like how you interact with other people. I'll be completely honest, I have not been the nicest person over the past few weeks. I've just been so stressed out and like anxious, and then now feeling just so emotionally and physically exhausted from pouring all my energy into this recital. So I definitely am like at the end of my rope when it comes to patience with other people, which I do feel really bad about, but I think I just need to take some time by myself and figure out how I can just chill because I just don't have it in me right now. So funny story, actually. Yesterday I was wandering around near the con after I had a practice session, and I decided to go to Indigo because I love books and reading, and it's just like aesthetic and chill in there. So I went in and I was looking at the staff picks for books, and they had like little tags on the right hand corner saying which staff member, like the name of the staff member who picked the book. And I was looking and I saw this book by the opera legend Renee Fleming, who is literally one of the most famous and iconic American sopranos of all time, and probably one of the like leading sopranos of her generation. And I saw this book and it was recommended by a girl named Charlotte. So I was like, okay, this is clearly a sign from the universe that I need to buy this book and read it. So I bought it, and between like yesterday afternoon and this morning, I've literally read half of it. It's like 250 pages long, and I spent like an hour in the park reading it yesterday, and then I read it last night and I read it this morning. It's so good. She's so iconic. But my point with that just being that finding things that can kind of help you reignite your passion or realize like why you love what you do, that can really help. Like I'm already feeling more inspired to start working on some new rep and working towards these other performances that I have coming up. And then yeah, just like being gentle with myself too. I know that I'm a really motivated person a lot of the time, and I like to constantly be getting things done and being really productive, but it's had to take some time for me to just chill out and let myself rest in order for me to kind of combat this burnout, I guess, and just dividing up my work into really small portions instead of doing everything at once. Like for instance, with my English class, I have this huge final paper I have to write, and we had proposals that are due this week. And I knew that I really didn't want to do it, and I really didn't want to work on it because it was just going to be a lot of like research and reading and like scanning through articles and not actually getting into the interesting part yet. Yeah, I just decided to break it up into tiny little chunks. So every day on my to-do list, it would just be, okay, I'm going to find 2 sources today and annotate my bibliography for those 2 sources. But that's it. I'm not going to make myself do a huge chunk. And then I've done the same for my other courses, tried to divide up my work and just, yeah, give myself lots of room to chill out. And I've been trying to go for lots of walks. The weather has been getting so much nicer, thank God. I am like so done with snow and cold and wind. The wind in Toronto is awful. And yeah, anyways, that's not the point. But I guess this is a bit all over the place. But I'm just thinking about it now, and it seems like burnout for most of us happens around this time of year or a bit before, like February, early March, when you're right in the thick of all your academics and everything, and you have midterms and the weather is shitty and everybody's just exhausted and there's not enough sunlight. And yeah, I definitely feel that. But I feel like spring is coming, and there's hope, and there's a vaccine coming and everything. And I'm not even going to get into that because that's just stressful. But yeah, I think the best way to fight burnout is to have faith and have hope with the things that you love to do. And again, I guess this is similar to my getting your shit together episode, but just finding the why. Like, why are you doing this degree, or why are you pursuing this career? And reminding yourself why you love that is going to give you so much motivation to push through your period of burnout. And that's just, I guess, my best advice. Honestly, I have no idea. If I had all the answers, I wouldn't feel burnt out right now because I would just be able to keep going. But yeah, I just have to keep looking forward towards the future and not dwelling on any of the tough stuff right now. Just like get it done, just put my head down and do it, and be kind to myself. So yeah, I think also something worth noting is that burnout, at least in my experience, has led to a lot of stress about being burnt out. Like, I have so much stuff to get done that I just feel so exhausted about and so not interested in doing that I stress myself out about it, and then I get really anxious. And it's definitely been affecting my like sleep schedule, especially. I've been having awful sleep, so I just sit in bed I've actually been thinking about an idea of, it's called biphasic sleep. So you break up your sleep schedule into 2 chunks, and there's kind of, you can do it in different ways. For instance, in Spain, they have like, they sleep at night, but they sleep usually for less time than other like cultures would. And then they take like their siesta in the afternoon, which is like an afternoon nap. And in like earlier times, I think like medieval, and then even up to, don't quote me on this, I'm just like throwing research that I've heard randomly. I can't give you any direct sources, but I think until around like 1800 even, there was a bit of a trend, like they would sleep for half of their, however long they were going to sleep for, and then they'd wake up in the middle of the night and do something for an hour, whether that was like something productive or something fun, or, you know, basically they could do anything, and then they would go back to sleep for the rest of the time, which I think is interesting. And my body definitely has like slumps in energy, and then I peak again around like midnight or even like 1 a.m. Sometimes I get like a lot of energy. So I'm considering trying that, and maybe that'll help me be more productive if I can just, like, if I'm not going to be able to fall asleep, at least make use of that time. But that does sound a bit toxic and not healthy, so I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm just still working towards finding a healthy balance of being able to consistently do work instead of having phases where I do so much and I have so much energy and I can learn things super quickly and get everything done, and then phases of like not doing anything for days at a time because I just don't have the energy. I think that finding a healthy balance would be really good. So I've been trying to use my Notion a lot and planning out things like weeks in advance and just taking note of stuff. Yeah, honestly, that's kind of it for me in terms of burnout. I unfortunately am feeling burnt out, so I don't have much to say this week. But if you're interested, if you're a musician, or even if you're not, honestly, well, okay, especially if you're a singer, if you're a musician, you probably still enjoy it. Maybe not so much if you're not a singer, but Renee Fleming's book that I'm reading right now, it's called The Inner Voice. It's fantastic. I think she published it in 2004, so it is a bit older, and obviously she's not going to be talking about more of her current performances and things, but it's super interesting to see her progression. She really goes in depth with how she got to where she is now and her teachers and things that she had to work on and her struggles. And I had no idea how much effort she had to put into, like, I didn't know much about her story, and it was just so interesting. So I would really recommend reading that. I've been listening to a lot of Renee Fleming now because I'm reading her book, and she's just has such a gorgeous voice. So I mean, I've always enjoyed her Schubert recordings. I listen to those a lot. I think I've mentioned them before. And I'm just started working on Forêts après un rêve, which is a fantastic melody. And she has a lovely recording of that as well. And she does lovely recordings of most things, but her French is quite good. So I would recommend, I think that recording is on her album. It's like called Night Songs or Songs of the Night. It's really nice. She just has a lovely voice. Hopefully I can get to that status someday. But yeah, that's like what I've been listening to lately. And also Lana Del Rey's new album came out, Chemtrails Over the Country Club. Not my favorite album by her, I'm not gonna lie. I think that her last album, Norman fucking Rockwell, was a lot better artistically, but I mean, we are in a pandemic, and I think it's probably taking its toll on her as well. But yeah, that's something I've been listening to as well. And I also had to watch for my Italian class the film Life is Beautiful, which was so sad. It's about an Italian man, a Jewish Italian man in World War II who, along with his son and his wife who isn't Jewish, get taken to a concentration camp, and then he kind of makes up a game to make sure that his young son doesn't realize what's like the horrors of what's actually happening. And it's really, really sad, but really well done. And it's all in Italian with English subtitles. So I'd recommend watching that too. It's a classic. It's won Oscars, and the acting is amazing, and it's just really sweet. and sad at the same time. So would recommend that as well. Yeah, that's what I've been consuming lately. If anybody has any recommendations for inspiring artists or films or anything to help me get out of this burnout slump, I would love to hear them. You can DM me on Instagram at LadyLazPod. Thanks so much for tuning in. I know this episode was a bit shorter than the last ones, but it's just me here. I'm trying my best. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you have any experiences with burnout. I think we've all gone through it at one point or another, and it's nice to know that you're not alone. We all struggle with it. So I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you again next Tuesday. Bye.